Okay, moving on. Let's get to the next one, which is one of my favorites. It seems to be a favorite of a lot of people. Again, it kind of had a little reemergence, and that is creatine. Let's talk about creatine because I love that one.
Oh, yeah. Creatine has definitely had a major reemergence in the last couple of years, going from, sort of like the I just want to get jacked supplement that sometimes people think is like steroids, or creatine. Isn't that bad for your kidneys? Isn't that going to damage your liver? Isn't
getting that?
Yeah. Isn't that, I don't know, that creatine stuff. Should my high school son who's playing football be taking creatine? He's a little young. Versus now, more and more research has emerged. Number one, creatine is like the most researched supplement in the history of the game. There is more evidence backing the effectiveness of creatine than basically any other supplement. And everything we'll talk about today are well researched. And that's why they're, in our list. Like, there is evidence for the benefit of all of these things. But creatine, I would say the biggest shift with creatine is that it's become more of a longevity supplement. And that's primarily based on the positive effects it has on brain health. So now all of a sudden creatine has gone from, I'm just a 25-year-old who's trying to get yoked to I am, a senior who's trying to maintain muscle mass and also maintain my cognitive function.
I don't even know about a senior, but I mean, I'm pushing 50. I don't think I'm a senior yet.
Anybody. Yeah. That's kind of
everywhere in between.
Yeah. I mean, really, creatine, I would say, is perfectly safe and helpful for teenagers all the way to, senior citizens. So,
yeah. Stephen and I did a pretty in-depth podcast on creatine because we were getting so many questions, and it was kind of reemerging. It was like, well, we should talk about it and just kind of give our take on it. It's to date in the history of the Iron Size podcast, one of the most, I think it's number 3 or 4 now in terms of most downloaded podcasts. Got a lot of attention. YouTube seems to love it. People are watching still. And it answers a lot of questions on kind of like what creatine is, how it functions in the body, why it's important, very specifically to performance and brain health, as that obviously trickles over into health and wellness and just longevity. So it's one of those ones that covers all the angles on that triangle of awareness that we've talked about so many times in the past. And it is really for everybody. There's very few contraindications to this, if any, that I'm aware of right now.
Yeah. Other than, if you take too much, it's going to give you the runs. That's probably about as bad as it's going to get.
I think the most common thing I still hear, and some people think this is like the effect. I think a lot of people still don't really know the mechanism of it, is they think of like the water retention.
It's going to make me bloated.
It's going to make me bloated. But some people I actually talk to, some bros, is they think it's like, it makes you look like fuller. It makes me
which is true.
Yeah. Which is a component of it. But I think that's a lot of the fear, is like the hydration component with it.
Yeah. Oh, I tried some creatine. It made me bloated. Or, it is women often, creatine's going to make me puffy. It's going to make me heavy. Or, I feel, puffy, whatever, bloated. There is going to be some increase in water retention. It is, creatine by design is going to pull some water to your muscles, which is going to actually help the cell signaling. It's going to play a role in an increase in muscle mass. So yes, there could be some water retention that people do experience. My suggestion with that, if you're concerned with it, maybe start with a lower dose versus the standard dose of creatine monohydrate is 5 grams per day. Loading phase, we can touch base on that. The loading phase, in my opinion, is not necessary unless maybe you are a vegan and you're getting no creatine from your diet. Creatine does appear in animal protein. So if you are consuming animal protein, you should be getting some creatine from your diet. If you do not consume any animal protein, then perhaps a loading phase of creatine for a week, you go 10 to 20 grams a day. Even just saying the 20 grams, I'm like, that makes my stomach hurt. That may be necessary, but for most people, 5 grams per day is the standard dose, but maybe start with 2 grams, maybe start with 3 grams, see how your stomach reacts to it. That's probably the number one side effect I hear about, is just some digestive discomfort or a little bit of GI issue or GI upset. So just start with a little bit of a lower dose, and maybe you can, you can avoid a little bit of that bloating or water retention.
Yeah, again, just on the creatine side of things, it's a hot topic kind of all the time, or it has been as of late. It just kind of keeps coming up, and I think people are interested in it, and they're still a little unsure about it. If you have more questions on it, again, we went in depth on it on this one. It's episode number 83. Go back and listen to that one for some more detail on creatine. But the point of that being number 2 on the list is, again, going back to that triangle of awareness and what people are generally trying to attempt by taking or by utilizing, dietary supplements. And that is, I want to look better, I want to feel better, and I want to perform better. Creatine hits all of those angles. So yes, your 16-year-old high school son can use that safely. It just kind of putting that out there. We handled that in that podcast too, because because we got so many questions about it. And think about it this way: like if there's something that your 16-year-old son could be utilizing, or daughter, yes, I just say that because it usually comes up around the boys,
typically,
right?
Yeah.
That is, like, think about this: like all the things that they're faced with, and all the things that are being put in front of them or marketed to them to get bigger muscles, to look better, to feel better, maybe perform better on the field, the court, the mat, whatever else. Like creatine's a good one.
Yeah.
Like that's one like I would encourage, with all the other things that they could be asking you about or potentially putting in their system and maybe already doing. Like that's not one you should be worried about. And again, I would encourage it in a lot of cases. It's not a magic bullet for anybody on any side of that triangle whatsoever. But if you're going to make an investment, this is a very inexpensive one to make, and with little to no risk factor. So, I'm just, if you're putting in hundreds of dollars into your supplement, regimen per month or whatever, like this is going to occupy a very small amount of that budget, but it will yield several benefits.
I mean, I think it's funny. I think it's probably like some of the awareness of people with teenagers and their caffeine intake. I feel like that's kind of gone up a lot. People aren't even worried about that at all, but they're worried about creatine, when I feel like caffeine has a little bit more, even though as I sip on a caffeine drink here, like there's a lot of more potential negative side effects, especially for an adolescent. But I think it's interesting too, because even from that time you guys did that episode, like there's been some newer studies about the cognitive benefits. And they're even like there's a study about like on, the subjects were sleep deprived and taking even a larger dose. I think it was
up to like 20 milligrams.
I think it was 20 milligrams, and like seeing a performance increase from like a cognitive standpoint, which creatine's been around for forever. Even when I was a teenager, I started taking it, and it was always kind of marketed as this like performance thing. So it's kind of cool now to see the benefits of really anyone can benefit from it at this point, especially from that kind of side of things. So.
Yeah, it's become an everyone supplement. It's become a longevity supplement, not just a sports performance supplement that it was for so long.
Yeah.
Right on. So again, like you can go back and listen to the episode 83. You just mentioned the caffeine one. We covered that one too, very specifically in the energy drinks episode that we did. And you make a good point, but Steve and I also made a case for why these things aren't that bad. Yeah. And people, it's funny that the messages I was getting after that, oh, cool. So I can tell my wife, that it's okay, for me to be drinking these things again, or whatever the case was. I thought that was interesting. But the point of that being is, when you look at the 2 most studied, like ergogenic type of supplements that people are adding for increased performance, there's 2, and they're the most studied to date, and probably that ever will be, at least in my lifetime, is creatine and caffeine.
Yeah.
And they're both great, but there's great benefits to both. Obviously, how much is too much. That's an individual thing, but we talk about that in that episode as well.